So, welcome everybody. I'm Amanda Clegg. I'm a trustee of Friends of Asha in Great Britain, and I've been associated with Asha for the last 12 years since I visited in 2008. And little did I know the impact that that visit was going to have on my life, how inspired I was going to be by what I saw, and the incredible work that Asha were doing in the slum communities. Since then, I've led many groups of volunteers to visit Asha, and I've also written a fundraising cookbook that showcases the food of the women of the communities to give them a voice. And one thing that's really always struck me is that Asha doesn't stand still as an organisation. It always evolves to reflect the most pressing needs of the communities that it works in and to bring hope in very real ways. And today is about hearing about that hope and those interventions really from Asha's founder and director, Dr Kiran Martin. She trained as a paediatrician, and in 1988 she saw the need to bring healthcare to the urban poor in Delhi. And really from that vision, Asha was born. And over the last 32 years, Dr. Kiran has worked tirelessly, growing Asha and the work that it does. And she has been recognised in India for her work with the urban poor, and Asha has been recognised internationally for its model of community transformation. Dr. Kiran and her husband, Freddie, in a supporting role, have been instrumental in Asha's growth and Asha's success. And I think it's fair to say they have faced many challenges over the years, and this pandemic has been a huge one. And it's the focus of this interview. So, Dr. Kiran, thank you for your time, and I'm really looking forward to hearing from you. Can we start by, can you tell us about the early days of the lockdown in the slums and what it was like for people?
Thank you, Amanda, for your kind introduction. The government of India announced a lockdown on March 24th. And the slum residents all over the city, as you might know, are daily wage earners, and they work in scrap yards, or they sell wares on pavements or at traffic lights, or they work at construction sites. Women often work as domestic helps in people's homes, and they would be earning approximately 2 to 5 pounds a day. And they just about have enough to buy what they need, and they spend that, and then they earn the next day and they spend it again. So they don't really have any reserves. They don't have any extra money. And so there was when the lockdown was announced, it came as a huge financial shock, because from the very next day, people couldn't go to work. And then to make things even worse, the police was out on the streets, and they were at the receiving end of terrible police brutality, because they had no idea actually what was really going on. And when they left their homes, the police was there, and they beat them on their legs, and they beat them on their backs, and they shouted at them, and they abused them and asked them to go back. And it was very traumatizing for this entire population. And we are talking about 4 million people, of which, of course, we are looking after 700,000 spread across 91 slums, just to put things in perspective.
Wow, such a shock for them. And can you tell us how Asha responded initially, and then how that response has had to evolve over the weeks and months?
So, because of the lockdown, everything was shut. Our clinics were shut. None of the team members could get to the clinics because there was no public transport. So I immediately reached out to the young people in the Asha communities who are our students at university or who graduated. And I asked them if they would like to become Asha Corona warriors. And they came forward with so much enthusiasm, and they were brave, and they were willing to work, be at the front lines. So the first thing I did is form these teams. And then I sent money, because that was what people needed desperately. There was no cash in their pockets and they badly needed it. So first thing I did is give cash handouts. Then the next thing I did is give them grocery bags, and each bag contained all the essential items like rice, wheat, oil, pulses, sugar, salt, soap, things like that. And it was the warriors who were on the ground who had to go from home to home. And I paid special emphasis on the elderly, on the the vulnerable, the widows, women with young children, disabled people. So these groups I really looked after in a more special way, although I looked after everyone. And then they had no masks and all of that. So the warriors went from home to home, explaining how they can get a piece of cloth and cover their faces, showed them how it was so important, explaining the importance of physical distancing and hand washing, and physical distancing to the maximum extent possible. Obviously in a slum, it's just not ideal because of their small homes. But they tried their best to at least make sure that the people weren't roaming around in the lanes and in the streets.
Amazing. Thank you. Gosh, thank goodness that you were there to do all of that. It doesn't really bear thinking about what would happen to them otherwise. Asha has always focused on the women and the children. So let's look at these groups in particular. Starting with the children, I'm aware that Asha usually offers immunizations and healthcare, encourages them, to go to school, empowers them, all amazing work. How has the pandemic affected these the youngest members of the slums?
So, I've been working among the children under 5 years of age over the last 32 years. And as a pediatrician, I felt compelled that I must look into their problems. And so when I first started my work, most of them were malnourished. Now, Asha's worked very hard to help them become healthy. And now, because of the pandemic, the children have lost a lot of weight and they've fallen into malnutrition, which can be either moderate or severe. And, children tend to lose weight very quickly if they're starved and if they're not given enough to eat. And so I was shocked to find all these malnourished children everywhere. And I said, I must respond. So I started a malnutrition clinic, especially for children under 5. And I started making sure that they were all weighed and they were all given all the supplements, because they needed those supplements, things like iron and folic acid and vitamin A and B complex and zinc, all of these very critical supplements. And then Amanda, you stepped in and we worked together to create a high calorie, high protein nutritious supplement. And how shall I thank you, Amanda, for that wonderful piece of work. So it's an Indian sweet called a laddu, but it's really meant to give these children about 400 calories at one instance. So the mothers and their children come to the Asha Center and they sit there and they're given these nutritional supplements. And I'm very happy to tell you that a lot of the children have already started gaining weight. And minus these supplements and minus this care to the children, they would have fallen into very severe malnutrition and would have even died. And the effects of malnutrition. You can have stunting, you can have impaired learning skills, you get a low IQ, and there are serious complications that could arise in the immediate instance, and of course, very long-term implications for the future. So I'm really glad that I've been able to step in and intervene for the children under 5.
Absolutely amazing. And for the women, I mean, I certainly have been shocked to see some of the pictures coming from Asha of so many malnourished women as well. What has that been like for you to see? And how has Asha responded to their plight?
So you might recall that Asha began through empowering women, back in 1988. My heart went out to the women because they were on the margins. They were disempowered. They had no voice in the community. They had no voice in the family. And I started helping women to form women's groups. And then they became the main agents of change and transformation. Now over here, because of the pandemic, first of all, of course, they couldn't go to work if they were working as domestic helps or working, somewhere else to earn some money. And the other thing I noticed, for which I was so concerned, is that they were also rapidly losing weight. And in our culture, women always eat last. They would take care of their husbands and they take care of their children. And there's no one to really ask them, how are you? How are you feeling? What are you going through? What are your emotions? What are your challenges? Have you eaten? And I found these women coming to the Asha center, whom I called them. I started a special women's malnutrition clinic. I said, I must start this clinic. And the women were weighing 30 kilos, 31 kilos, 32 kilos, and their body mass index, which should be at least 20 to 25, was 12, 13. And so I felt like this is an emergency. We must respond. And they were also severely anemic. So again, I turned to you and we both talked about it. And then you were able to help me with a special high calorie, high protein powder, which we created at Asha. And now all these women who are malnourished come every day to Asha. And they bring their glasses along and then they consume this high calorie, high protein powder in a group. And that way they also get support from one another. And then there's people to ask them about give them emotional support, the Asha team giving them emotional support. And it's just started, but I'm hoping that it will help these women to gain weight.
Fantastic. I'm so thrilled. I'm so thrilled to hear that. So lastly, really, how can supporters around the world, or maybe new people who don't know about Asha, how can they help? I mean, normally people could come and volunteer, they could get involved, but obviously at the moment they can't. We can't travel to India, we can't come and join you personally. What are the ways, do you think, that they can best support Asha at this crucial time?
Before I go on to that, I just want to say a very big thank you to those who have supported Asha, because first of all, without your support, I would have never been able to do all the things that I've done. At the present time, we were already doing so much in Asha, in healthcare, in education. And now we have to obviously do all that, but we have to do all this relief work for the pandemic. So there are thousands of families under our care. 700,000 is the population of a city in some other part of the world. And so we've got a lot of work ahead of us. I also will continue to require mobilization of resources because, like I said, it's going to be a while. So I hope that, you can continue mobilizing resources for groceries, for cash, for medicines, which they desperately need, and for nutritional support, as we just discussed. And of course, we've got the class 12 students who've just got their exam results, and some of them have done phenomenally well. So I would like to send them to university, but we would have to pay 100% of their college tuition if they had to go to university. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kiran. Wow, I'm so grateful for your time today and for your insights into what really is happening on the ground. The impact of the pandemic is terrible for many people around the world, but I think for these families in the slums, the hardship is so real. And it's wonderful what Asha is doing, these malnutrition clinics and giving out medicines, giving out food, actually really saving lives and spreading hope, which is what Asha always does. Asha means hope in Hindi, and it's wonderful to see what you're doing. And I know that without Asha's interventions, many more lives would be lost. There would be long-term damage done to the health and welfare of many families. So it's wonderful what you're doing. And to listeners out there, if you'd like to journey with Asha in some way, as Dr. Kiran said, please feel free to email in words of encouragement. Email address is info@asha-india.org. Or of course, If you are able to, if you would like to make a financial donation, that would be hugely appreciated. As Dr. Kiran said, Asha really needs funds, and they really need funds for the long haul, because this problem is not going to go away immediately, and it's going to take a long time for these families to get back on their feet and to get work and to get the income coming in the way that they had before. The easiest way is to go to the Asha website, www.asha-india.org, and click the donate button. There's a big red button. You should be able to easily find it. It's on the front page. So we really appreciate that. If you're able to do that, please join with us, join with Dr. Kiran and her team in giving hope and support to these vulnerable families. Thank you for listening. Thank you, Dr. Kiran, for your time.